I am Joyce Cassell. I have 4 adult kids. I have a husband who has a gift of hospitality. And so I am going to take you a little bit on my journey with him, because I actually do not have the gift of hospitality. Okay, so when I was single, maybe I might have had a few of my really close friends over, but I would never invite a group of people over unless I had, like a major planning going on ahead of time. I am not very spontaneous, so it was a real stretch when I got married. And my husband would come up to me and go, "Oh, by the way, I invited so-and-so over." And they're going to be over, like right after church. He's telling me this at church. It's kind of, okay. So it caused a great deal of stress and anxiety in my life. So that's the first thing that I would encourage you, especially if you're newly married, to do, is try and get on the same page, discuss, where you're both coming from, and try and figure out each other's styles a little bit, because it did cause a great deal of friction beginning in our marriage. And then, of course, there's the having small kids. Your house is a total disaster area. Well, my house was a total disaster area even before kids. But, so that's the other part of it. With young kids, I found it best if I had something in the freezer that I could pull out and make real quickly. And I did a lot of freezer cooking, making meals ahead, and that really helped decrease my stress load. Then, I was homeschooling all 4 kids, so then you have all the stuff that goes with homeschooling and trying to figure out how to organize that. But I was starting to get more comfortable with having people over. And then we started doing something, we started doing this historical reenacting when my kids got to be teenagers. And so we would, camp in the cotton tents, the canvas tents, get dressed up in period costumes, cook over the open fire. Fun. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was really good family times. And I can probably count 2 times that we did that, and we usually did it twice a year. I can count probably 2 times in the last 10 years when we did not have somebody join us. So our family has grown. And now, in the last few years, we moved to Wisconsin about 6 years ago, and shortly after we moved, we had one of my daughter's friends come live with us. We had a gentleman who was homeless stay out at our place. We really didn't have a place in our house for him, but we had an outbuilding that was climate controlled. And so he and his cat stayed out there, and then they used our house for the bathroom facilities and stuff like that. And then one of the kitchen helpers, Gabby, is actually living at our place right now. So, God has taken me from a place where I was so stressed, just to have one family over, to taking, and now the last year we've had several gatherings where we've had over 20 people.
Wow.
And in fact, that's how I met the Forsters, is they came over for a music night that we had out at our place. So, it's been quite a journey, and God has been good through it. So, anyone know 1 Peter 4:9? That's one of the verses. You want to say it, Sarah?
Use hospitality one to another without grudging. 1 Peter 4:9.
Yes. Use hospitality one to another without grudging. And that was the lesson that I had to learn. I was very resentful of my husband, or even my kids, when they would take and say, oh, I'm going to bring so-and-so over, it's kind of like, but, I have to. And I would have that grudging attitude, and the Lord has really dealt with me in that. And that gets to the heart of the matter. Why should we have hospitality? Why is hospitality important? And as I was thinking about it and thinking about some of the things we were talking about at the retreat this weekend, I think the major reason why hospitality is important is because it is part of God's character. If you think about the fact that God came down to earth, He fellowshiped with us, He broke bread with us, or with the disciples, He's calling us to heaven to live with Him. That is a picture of hospitality. And then some other reasons why we should have hospitality is because it is a blessing to our brothers and sisters in Christ. There's the Christian community. With the early church in Acts, chapter 2, verse 42 through 47, it talks about that the believers came together, they were devoted to the apostles' teaching, they had fellowship with one another, they shared their meals as well as their possessions with each other, they prayed and worshiped together, and they enjoyed the goodwill of all the people, and the Lord added to their numbers. That is just a picture of what hospitality should be and can be. Another reason to have hospitality is to reach the lost. Now, Jesus was not the host, but with Zacchaeus invited him in, and Jesus talked to them about the Father and what it meant to have a relationship with the Father. And Luke reports in Luke 19, verses 1 through 9, that salvation came to that house because of the hospitality that was offered. One thing I find, for me, it's hard sometimes to take and bring Christ into a conversation with people, but I find I just need to follow the Holy Spirit's lead, and if I feel that prompting, to be bold in doing it, because what are they going to do? Leave? Well, that's the worst thing that can happen. We also offer hospitality to receive God's blessing. Could somebody look up Matthew 25, verses 34 to 40, and read that out loud for us? Matthew 25, starting in 34 to 40.
Then shall the king say unto them on his right hand, Come ye blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundations of the world. For I was an hungered, and ye gave me meat. I was thirsty, and ye gave me drink. And a stranger, and ye took me in. Naked, and ye clothed me. I was sick, and ye visited me. I was in prison, and ye came unto me. Then shall the righteous answer him, saying, Lord, when saw we thee an hungered and fed thee, or thirsty? Hungered and fed thee, thirsty and gave thee drink. When saw we a stranger and took thee in, or naked and clothed thee? Or when we saw thee sick or in prison and came unto me? And the king shall answer and say unto them, Verily I say unto you, inasmuch as ye have done it unto one of the least of these my brethren, ye have done it unto me.
So one of the things I get from this passage is when we offer hospitality, we receive the Lord's blessing. So he starts out by saying that, Come, you who are blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you, because you offered hospitality to people, and you cared for people. And that's really what hospitality is. it is caring for people. The simplest definition is people welcoming other people wherever they are. Think about that. You're welcoming people wherever you're at. One of the definitions I found online was the friendly and generous reception and entertainment of guests, visitors, and strangers. So let's break that down a little bit. So reception and entertainment. We receive people wherever we're at. We can offer hospitality at work. You know, if you're at work and you have a candy jar sitting on your desk, that's a form of hospitality. Your kids at school, or, you know, when I was at school, you know, invite a friend to eat lunch with you or sit on the bus with you. You can extrapolate that out to other things too. At church, it's very important to offer hospitality, especially to people who are visiting, because how many of you have been to a new church? You come in there, you sit with your family, you leave, and nobody talks to you. Are you going to come back to that church? Not really. When you come to a church and you're new there, it is so nice to have somebody come up and say, "Hi, welcome, I'm glad you're here." It's even better if they offer to take you out to lunch or invite you to their home. You know, so one of the things that the Lord has taught me to do is to look for those people who don't have anybody by them and go up and at least say hi. And sometimes we will invite people over, you know, just spur of the moment. My husband invited a college student to come with us. We had a friend who was going to take us up flying in a small airplane, so he invited him along. You know, and we didn't see him for a few weeks, but he was back last week, so. So we invite people wherever we're at. We receive people despite the circumstances. And one of the people that the Lord brought to mind in this example was the widow of Zarephath. God spoke to Elijah and said that he was going to instruct a widow to feed him. So Elijah went and found the widow, and he asked her for something to eat and drink. Do you remember what her response was? "I only have a little flour and a little oil. I was going to make the last of it up so that my son and I could eat, and then we would die." She didn't have anything. But Elijah said, "Please give me something to drink and make a little bit for me." And she did that out of faith. You know, the Lord prompted her to do that. And Elijah told her, you know, God will provide for you. And she had enough to eat so that the rains came, because it was a famine time, there was a drought. The rains came, the crops were harvested, and then the oil and the flour ran out. So God will provide. You don't have to offer much. Some of the more memorable times that somebody hosted me, we came to a place and we went to visit a family, and they had already eaten, but we hadn't, so the wife offered us a grilled cheese sandwich. I've had coffee and cinnamon toast. We went to visit a relative, and they didn't have a lot, but the wife made a corn and potato chowder. You know, it wasn't anything fancy, but we had good fellowship. So, does anyone have an example of times when people have offered you hospitality that you want to share? Anything memorable that sticks out? Yeah?
I was just talking with her and got to go ahead to have me tell. I had a friend over to visit. They live in Green Bay, but we lived out in Waukesha. and so when they came to visit, I didn't feel like I had that much, but I still made a stew, bone broth stew, and I was able to add vegetables from my garden, so I just threw in what I had, which was mushrooms and, what was it, peppers and zucchini, and her baby just ate a bowl of mushrooms. It was amazing, she said, and I took your word for it, and I was glad I had something to offer, and it was an awesome time. We visited and we had great, what's the word? Fellowship, thank you. Thank you. So, and it ended up being more about the fellowship than the stew, but my point being is I just took what I had and we shared it, and it was great. So.
Yeah.
Like to mention, I grew up in a family that was very hospitality-wise, and so pretty much almost every Sunday or whatever, we always had company over. And as a teenager, what I very much enjoyed was the fact that we would have missionary families over, and we got to spend that special time to get to know them. You know, so they weren't just a picture on the wall at church to pray for. You got to know their kids, you got to know what the kind of their needs were and how to pray for them. And that has always stuck in my heart, and I have a true care for our missionaries because of growing up in a family like that, where we really actually got to know them and to meet them. So it can make a very good impression on your children for having that heart for the Lord, for others to care for them and pray for them.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Hospitality really is showing the Lord's love with your actions. It really is. So what does hospitality look like? It can be formal. You know, you can have a themed party. You can have a big celebration. The thing that I find very, very helpful is to do as much in the days ahead as possible, like days ahead. You know, like on Wednesday or Thursday, clean the house, and then you just have a little touch-up to do right before the weekend when you have somebody over. Make your meals, make as much of the meal ahead of time as you can. Look for recipes like a crock pot mashed potato that you can have in the fridge, and all you have to do is pull it out and put it in the crock pot, heat it up. Cook your meat ahead of time even, and slice it and have it on a tray just to put in the oven and warm. So anything you can do ahead of time that will allow you to focus more on the people rather than the preparations, I find very, very helpful, especially with those big formal things that you're doing. One of the things that we really like to do, because we live out in the country now, is have informal gatherings. So potlucks are one of my favorites. I just try and make sure that I have enough of everything so that if people, you know, bring potato chips or pop, that we have enough food to eat. And of course, I really love the paperware part of an informal gathering, because then I don't have to worry about dishes. So the thing I want you to take away, though, is without Christ's heart, we're just entertaining. We're not actually practicing hospitality. It is the heart that matters when you're offering hospitality. So another part of that definition is the friendly and generous reception of people. Could somebody read John 13, verse 20? John 13, verse 20. Somebody have that?
Verily.
No.
That's good.
Okay, flip the coin. Who goes?
Pardon?
Go ahead.
Okay. Verily, verily, wait, where did it go? Pointing. Verily, there's two verilies right on the same page. So, verily, verily, I say unto you, he that receiveth whomsoever I send receiveth me, and he that receiveth me receiveth him that sent me.
So, in another translation, the word receiving is welcoming. So we want to be welcoming to others in our attitude, in our home, you know, throw the dishcloth over the dirty dishes in the sink if you have to. That was a tip from the fire last night. Yeah, just make your home as welcoming as you can. One of the things I've got some things here if you want to look at them. One of them is from a website. It's called the Dirty 30. And the Dirty 30 is just like a little quick checklist that should take you maybe 30 minutes to take and do as much as you can in that 30 minutes, and then you're done. And don't worry about the rest. You know, usually it's like 10 minutes in the kitchen, 10 minutes in the dining living room, and 10 minutes in the bathroom, and you know, then if you have any time left over, just finish where you were able to not do as much. So decorations, you can have decorations or not. You don't have to do a deep clean. One thing I would caution you on, if you have pets and stuff, think about the smell. You know, do you need to change out the cat box? Another thing about being welcoming is being thoughtful. Ask questions of your guests. Do they have any special dietary needs, allergies, sensitivities? You know, I actually have sensitivities to smells. So if somebody has this lovely perfumed candle, I'm not going to feel as welcome as if they just have, you know, not much there. Being considerate, thinking of physical safety. In the Bible times, when you did not take lightly inviting someone into your home, because once you invited them in for a meal, you were responsible for their safety, their physical safety. And you know, so if somebody came and they wanted to do harm to that person, it was up to you to take and protect them. So think about if you're inviting young children to your home. Is your home child-proof? Do you need to go around and just make sure some things are picked up? With older adults, especially in the wintertime, make sure the sidewalk is shoveled and the ice melt is put down. We had a very embarrassing thing happen. We had this couple come over, a lovely couple from church, but the gentleman was a little bit heavy, and he chose the wrong chair to sit in. So, you know, just think about those things. You know. Use my bad experience. Go from there. Yeah, he was fine. It was just embarrassing for both of us. So, be empathetic. Put yourself in their place. You know, if you're inviting a family who has, you know, not a lot of means, and you've got lots of fancy things around, don't be boastful or proud. You don't need to show off how good of a cook you are. You don't have to do, you know, gourmet meals and fancy things. You don't have to be, you know, the best housekeeper or very proud of how you're keeping your house, because they may not have that ability. They might have small kids and their house is just a total disaster most of the time, and they come to your place and they think, oh, she's got it perfect. You know. So being empathetic with people. Ethnic considerations are something that you should keep in mind too, potentially. Some cultures don't eat meat. You also have some vegetarian options if you know that that's an issue. We had an example where we invited a couple from church. They were African American people from the inner city. And they were coming from church with us. They followed us home. We parked in the garage. They parked right behind us. And we went in like we normally do. Come on in. And we went in through the garage door. Well, we found out later they were very offended. They were very offended because we did not welcome them in the front door. They felt that we were taking and trying to hide them so that our neighbors didn't see that we were inviting this African-American family home. That never occurred to us. So we had a good discussion about that and apologized. So there's things that you might not know about, just be open to them. And then if you're inviting different families, sometimes there can be a lot of friction between certain people. Just kind of think about what are the personalities of the people like. Are they going to be a good fit? Do they have common interests? If you have somebody who is like the president of the Democratic thing and somebody who's the president of the Republican thing, make sure they have some other interests in common, because it could get to be kind of a little bit on edge there. So be generous with humility. Have an attitude of gratitude. I like to look at, I have these things, I have a place where I can offer hospitality because the Lord has blessed me. And it is His. It is not mine. I don't own it. I am a steward of it. A friend of ours showed us a really good example of that. He had a brand new pickup truck. And my husband needed to haul something. And it was big and heavy, and it probably would damage the truck. And he said, take my truck, use it. It's God's truck. He was not worried about it because he didn't own it. We hold things loosely in this world because they belong to God. So, then who should we invite? Guests, visitors, and strangers. So, family, definitely family, invite family. Hopefully they love you no matter what, so they're pretty good to practice with. We had a lot of fun when my kids were little, my daughter. We had tea parties for her friends. We had birthday parties, holidays. That can always be a fun time. And even if you don't host it, start helping your mom out if she's getting older. You can always bring some dishes over. Friends, your friends, they'll know if you're going to put on a show or not. So you don't need to worry about impressing them too much. Some fun things to do are hosting game nights. If you have hobbies in common, have a party around that. Bible study or book club. One thing with friends, though, that is a caution, is some people are naturally energy givers. You're around them, and you go away and you feel refreshed. Some friends are energy takers. You're around them, and you give, and they take, and you feel drained. Try and balance the two, if you can. All your friends, if all of your friends are energy takers, you're having nothing to recharge you. So try and find a balance between your friendships. Acquaintances is another group of people that you might host. And for that, I think of people from church, people from work, people that you meet, like at the you go to the gas station at the same time Sunday morning to get coffee before church, and you run into them over and over and over again. Maybe the Lord is putting them in your life for a reason. I like to think of acquaintances as potential future friends. They may not become friends, but they might. Acts 2:46 and verse 20, verse 7 tell us that the believers worshiped together in the temple each day. They met in their homes for the Lord's Supper. They shared their meals with great joy and generosity. Acquaintances can be one of the most stressful type of people to invite in your home because you're thinking about, what are they going to think about me? Are they going to take and notice that my house is dirty? Are they gonna like what I cooked? You know, maybe I'm hoping to make a good impression on them. And I'd encourage you just to lay that aside, because it's going to be the fellowship and the relationship, not all the trappings that go with hosting somebody, that they're going to remember. Be genuine, caring, and strive to represent Christ to them. You know, if you focus on them more than focusing on yourself, they'll have a good time, because people like to take and talk about themselves. You know, if you're with somebody, get them to talk about themselves. There's a little thing I found on Social Pro Now. It's a website, or it's a blog. It's called IFR, Inquire. So, what did you have for breakfast this morning? Follow up. Did you like it? Do you make something similar at home? And then relate. I really enjoyed that fruit this morning. You know, it's very simple, but it's a way of starting a dialogue and starting to communicate. Some of the more interesting things that you can do is invite strangers over. In Hebrews 13:2 it says, "Don't forget to show hospitalities to strangers, for some who have done this have entertained angels without realizing it." We have an opportunity to invite some students at the university from South Korea over to our house. We invited one person, and then he said, "Oh, can I bring some of my friends over too?" So we ended up having 4 South Koreans over to our place. And we had Wisconsin surf and turf. We had venison and trout. And they really enjoyed the time with us. And they said, "We really enjoyed that. We would like to take and host you." So they came over to our place and they fixed us a Korean meal. Or, yeah, a Korean meal. So it was just a good time and good fellowship. I don't think they were believers at all, but my husband talked to them a little bit about traditions that we had of praying before meals and the fact that we were Christians. So we were kind of modeling some of our Christian beliefs to them so that at least it would plant some seeds. So one thing about strangers is be wise and in agreement with your spouse. There have been times when we have invited a stranger in our home to stay with us. There have been times when a stranger would have liked to have come and stayed with us, and we have declined because we both had to be in agreement with that and discerning what the Holy Spirit was telling us. And like you said, it can be a blessing to our children. You know, inviting missionaries over, showing hospitality to strangers, having somebody who's homeless over for a meal. That's modeling Christ to our kids. And it can be a way of blessing you. In Genesis 18, it talks about Abraham invited strangers to his tent for a meal. Those were angels. And they told him, "Abraham, your wife Sarah is going to have a child." So they relayed God's blessing to him. I told you about the gentleman who stayed with us, who was homeless. That was a really interesting story too, because he had found a job and he needed a place to keep his cats because he couldn't keep his cats in the car in the summer because it was too hot for them. So it's kind of like, well, yeah, you can keep your cats in our climate controlled building here. And well, if you're going to keep your cats there, we really can't have you staying in your car. So, okay, you can stay there too. Until you get on your feet, you get your job, and then you'll be able to take and, find a place to live. Yeah. God's timing and plan is not yours. Let me tell you that. This gentleman was at our place for about a week. He had a stroke. He went to the hospital. We found out he had other health complications. He was in the hospital for several months. He was discharged from the hospital. The hospital was so kind to take him, drop him off at our place again, without even notifying us. So he was with us for about 6 months. And he finally got a place right before the COVID lockdown happened of his own. So God's timing is not yours. But he can bless you through it too. Another example of a stranger that we invited, my husband was at a church playing guitar there, and it was a recovery church. And they had a speaker there by the name of Max. He was from Ukraine. And so my husband said, hey, come on over. And so he came over, and we had him for a meal. We invited another family who had adopted some kids from Ukraine that we knew, and we just had a lovely time fellowshipping. And now whenever, when we were still living over in the Twin Cities, whenever Max would come, we would try and make sure that we got to see him, because we just really loved him and his spirit. And it was a really good example for our kids of somebody who was following Christ. And then, like I said, with doing the rendezvous thing, we always have had extra kids with us. In fact, they really tried to take and give us the name of Mom and Pa Cassell, but we kind of mixed that. And then my daughter had a friend at Stout who was going to be homeless for a few weeks because she was moving from one housing to another, but had a job, and there's a gap between, so she stayed with us. She was not a Christian. Her language was not like we would like to have around our house. And sometimes that can be a little bit of a friction between people, but God calls us to have people and meet people where they're at. If you're a believer, there are some expectations about how you're going to behave to some degree. But we cannot expect people who are not believers to act redeemed. So, what if I'm not gifted in hospitality? My advice there is start small. Have a set time that you're going to do things. Because I don't know about you, but my family, there's a lot of that long goodbye of the Midwest. And so if you want to have a set time to start, a set time to end, and kind of try and stick with that. Keep things very simple. Don't try and go elaborate. Ask for help. Your friend comes over and you aren't quite prepared. Well, is there anything that they can do? You don't have to do everything. And also ask somebody who's got more experience. Oh no, I'm having a graduation party. I've never done that before. How much food should I make? What kind of food should I have? There are people with experience who would be glad to share with you. They might even come and help you too. And remember, it's not about you or how you do it. It's you showing other people the heart of the Father. So I have some things to look at here if you want. These were kind of lifesavers when I was a new wife. The complete Make and Mix book, because you can pre-prepare meat and put it in the freezer, so making a meal doesn't take a lot of time. And then there's once a month cooking, freezer cooking, so you can get meals ahead in the freezer. It's amazing what you can freeze. It really is. And I've got a holiday freezer cooking book here. And I think some are floating around. There's like some things I printed off on the internet, like the Dirty 30, some checklists and things. And I listed some resources on the bottom there. One I didn't write down that you might want to do, going off of what some of the people were talking about last night. There's a book by Dana K. White called Decluttering at the Speed of Life. And she's got a YouTube channel, and oh, she is a hoot. If you think you might need to declutter, she has tips and tricks, and she is probably, I'm guessing she's probably ADHD. And so she has struggled with this. She's struggled with hoarding, she's struggled with all kinds of things, and she is very real. She is very real.
What's
So-
the name again?
Decluttering at the Speed of Life. Dana K. White, D-A-N-A K. White. There's the website clutterbug.me. She does organizing styles. One of the things that I found is, and it caused a lot of friction in the beginning of our marriage, and I'm realizing after going through some of her stuff, why, is because I'm the kind of person who I find calm if things are put away and I can't see them. My husband is the kind of person who has to see everything. Otherwise he forgets that it's there, and it makes him anxious if he can't see it. So you can see how that would cause some friction. So she talks about different organizing styles and how you can kind of blend your family's organizing styles together. So anyway, those are just some resources. Another good thing if you're starting hospitality, look for recipes with 5 or fewer ingredients because they don't take much time. You can search for dump recipes. That's where you don't pre-prepare anything necessarily. You just dump everything into a crock pot or a pan. And then OAMC stands for once a month cooking. So those are things you can put in the freezer. So I hope you guys have found at least a little nugget of something that you can take with you. And if you have not learned anything today, please come talk to me because I can learn from you. So that's all I've got prepared. But thank you. It's been a lovely time. I wasn't necessarily going to be here, but I got invited to speak, and so I am really blessed to have been here. Thank you.